The shadows in the living room didn't just hide the furniture. They hid the rot eating away at the foundation of my own bloodline. At 78, the world expects you to be a fatting photograph, a blur of gray hair and soft memories, but my mind remained a razor, sharpened by the very silence they thought was my senility. I lay back in the wing-backed chair, the woolen throw pulled up to my chin, my breathing rhythmic and shallow, a perfect imitation of a woman lost in the depths of a heavy, geriatric slumber. Then came the sound that sliced through the hum of the refrigerator, the metallic click of a key turning in the lock. It wasn't a knock of a visitor, it was the intrusion of a thief. My own son, Daniel, stepped in first, followed by the sharp, impatient click of Courtney's designer heels. They didn't call out. They didn't check if I was breathing. They stood over me for a heartbeat, their shadows stretching across my face like bars of a cage. And then, satisfied by my stillness, they moved toward the mahogany desk where I kept the remains of my husband's legacy. My hand, hidden beneath the heavy knit of the quilt, closed around the small silver voice recorder Jacob had given me. My finger found the button, and the tiny red light, a digital eye, began to watch from the darkness. "She's out for the count," Daniel whispered, his voice devoid of the warmth he usually reserved for the moments he wanted alone. "Let's get this over with. I've got a meeting at 8. I heard the drawer groan, the one with the false bottom where the insurance policies and the deed to this house lived. Courtney let out a sharp, jagged laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "God, look at her, Daniel, sitting there in that hideous chair, eating tinned soup while sitting on a gold mine. She doesn't even know what she's worth anymore. She's like a child playing with a checkbook she can't read." Her words weren't just insults. They were a death sentence for the respect I thought we shared. "Helen doesn't need this much," Daniel replied, dropping the mother for my first name as if he were discussing a stranger's estate. "Once she signs the transfer tomorrow, we'll move her to the Oaks. It's better for her, safer, and the house settles both our debts." They spoke of my life as if it were already an obituary, dividing the spoils before the body was even cold. I felt a surge of cold fire in my veins, but I didn't move. I listened to the rustle of my private papers, the clink of the safe keys being tested, and the casual cruelty of their laughter as they planned to erase me from my own home. When the front door finally clicked shut, the silence that returned was different. It was heavy, pulsing with the weight of a betrayal that had been years in the making. I opened my eyes, the darkness of the room reflecting the newfound clarity in my soul. I wasn't a victim. I was a witness. Morning arrived not with a soft glow, but with the cold, unforgiving light of a courtroom. Every joint in my body ached from the night of stillness, but my resolve was forged in steel. I stood at the kitchen window, watching the steam rise from my tea, realizing that the house I had spent 50 years building was now a fortress under siege. The kettle whistled, a sharp, shrill warning, just as a soft, hesitant knock sounded at the door. It wasn't the entitlement of my children. It was Jacob, my grandson, the only one who still looked at me and saw a person instead of a bank account. He stepped in, his eyes tired from study, and for a moment, the urge to weep nearly broke me. "Grandma, you look different today," he murmured, sensing the shift in the air. I touched his hand, my fingers steady. "Different is good, Jacob," I replied, my voice a low, melodic warning. "It means the fog has finally cleared." But the storm was only beginning. I spent the afternoon drifting through the rooms, touching the chipped china and the faded curtains I'd sewn when Daniel was still a boy who cried over a broken toy. Now, he was the one breaking things, the only thing left that mattered: trust. I played the recording back, listening to Courtney's voice call me it as if I were a piece of discarded furniture. The anger didn't explode. It settled into a cold, calculated plan. I went to the bedroom and retrieved the metal box from the high shelf, the one containing the true ledger of my husband's investments, things Daniel and Courtney had never even dreamed existed. They thought they were stealing a house. They didn't realize they were trying to rob a woman who had been the architect of their entire reality. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long, bloody streaks across the living room floor, the phone rang. It was Daniel, his voice oily and rehearsed. "Hey, Mom. Just checking in. I'll be over tomorrow with those insurance papers we talked about. Just a few signatures to keep things tidy, okay?" I looked at the recorder on the table, the red light now off, but the truth preserved forever. "I'll be waiting, Daniel," I said, my voice as smooth as silk. "I'll be waiting for exactly what I deserve." I hung up, the silence of the house now feeling like an ally. I knew what I had to do, but the path was dangerous. To protect Jacob's future and my own dignity, I would have to play a game they weren't prepared for. I gathered my coat, the heavy wool feeling like armor, and looked at the photo of my late husband on the mantel. "Watch me," I whispered. I stepped out into the evening chill, heading toward the one place they never thought I'd go, the law offices of a man who knew exactly what final meant. But as I turned the corner, a dark car pulled up slowly beside me. The window rolled down, revealing a face I hadn't seen in 10 years, a face that knew a secret about my children that could destroy them both before they ever touched a penny of my money. The man smiled, a predatory, slow curve of the lips. "Going somewhere, Helen? Or should we talk about what your son really did with that first business loan?" My heart hammered against my ribs, a cliffhanger of a secret threatening to spill. I stood my ground, the recorder in my pocket a hidden weapon, as the shadows of the street closed in. The man in the car was Arthur Vance, a name that tasted like copper and old blood in my mouth. He was the shadow Daniel thought he had outrun, the ghost of a fraudulent business deal that had nearly sent my son to prison a decade ago. I had paid the silence money back then, emptying a secret account to keep my boy's name clean, but Daniel never knew. He thought he was a genius who escaped. He didn't realize he was a debtor living on his mother's mercy. Arthur's eyes were cold as he looked at me. "He's doing it again, Helen. Daniel's trying to leverage your house for a new venture, but he's already told the investors you've passed the point of mental competence. He's selling the skin before he's even hunted the deer." My grip on my purse tightened until my knuckles turned white. The betrayal I had heard on the recorder was just the tip of the iceberg. My son wasn't just impatient for his inheritance. He was actively erasing my existence to cover his own failures. "The door is closed, Arthur," I said, my voice projecting a strength that made him blink. "If you want your pound of flesh, you'll have to wait in line behind the woman who gave him life." I walked away, the sound of the car idling behind me like a predator deciding whether to pounce. My destination was no longer just the lawyer. It was the bank, the archives, and the darkest corners of my own memory. I reached the office of Mr. Bennett, my husband's oldest ally, just as the rain began to lash against the glass windows of the clay brick building. He looked at me, not with the pity most people reserve for the elderly, but with the sharp focus of a man who recognized a soldier returning to the front. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I placed the silver recorder on his desk and let the voices of my children fill the room. As Daniel's voice spoke of the Oaks and transferring authority, Mr. Bennett's jaw tightened. "They've already filed a preliminary inquiry regarding your capacity, Helen," he said softly, sliding a document across the desk. "They're not just waiting for you to sign, they're preparing to have a court sign for you." The room felt as though the oxygen had been sucked out. This wasn't just a family squabble, it was a legal execution. "Then we build a fortress," I replied. We spent hours in that dim office, redrafting the will, creating an irrevocable trust, and most importantly, adding a morality clause that would disinherit any beneficiary found guilty of predatory behavior toward the testator. I was signing my name over and over, each stroke of the pen a strike against the people I had once tucked into bed. I felt a hollow ache for the mother I used to be, but that woman had died the moment I heard them laughing in the dark. The next morning, the confrontation I had been dreading and craving arrived. Laura showed up first, her eyes red-rimmed, playing the part of the concerned daughter with an Oscar-worthy performance. She brought flowers, lilies, the flowers of funerals. "Mom, you've been so distant. We're just worried about your safety. This house is so big, so many stairs. Wouldn't you be happier somewhere where people can look after you?" I sat at the kitchen table, the new legal folders hidden in plain sight inside a grocery bag. "I'm perfectly safe, Laura, are you?" She froze, the vase of lilies halfway to the counter. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward, the sunlight catching the sharp edges of my glasses. "I mean that Arthur Vance stopped me on the street last night. He told me about Daniel's new venture. He told me why you're both so desperate for this house to be sold by the end of the month." The color drained from her face, leaving her looking sallow and old. Before she could spin a lie, the front door burst open. Daniel walked in, looking triumphant, holding a stack of white envelopes. "It's time, Mom. We've got the notary coming at 4. Let's just get these signatures done so we can all move on with our lives." I didn't rise. I stayed seated, the queen of a crumbling castle. I've already signed everything I need to sign, Daniel, I said. He smiled, that oily, arrogant stretch of the lips. Good. Which pile? The insurance or the property transfer? I reached into the grocery bag and pulled out the voice recorder. I pressed play. The kitchen was suddenly filled with Courtney's jagged laugh and Daniel's cold calculation. She won't need the money much longer. The silence that followed the recording was deafening. Daniel's smile didn't just fade, it evaporated. He looked at the device as if it were a coiled cobra. You were awake, he whispered. I have been awake for 78 years, Daniel, I replied, my voice a low thrum of power. But I have never seen you clearly until now. You didn't come here to protect me. You came here to scavenge. Laura began to sob, a high, thin sound of a trapped animal. Mom, we were in trouble. Daniel owes people. Dangerous people. We thought if we just took the house now, we could pay them back and you wouldn't even notice the difference in the home. The shocking entry happened then. The back door, which had been left unlocked, swung open. Jacob stood there, but he wasn't alone. Beside him was a man in a dark suit, a detective I had called from Mr. Bennett's office. But the real shock was what Jacob was holding. It wasn't a school book. It was a ledger he had found in Daniel's car. I found it, Grandma, Jacob said, his voice trembling with a mix of fury and heartbreak. It's not just the house. They've already drained the college fund you set up for me. They've been using my name to forge loan documents for months. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had devoured the future of the only innocent soul in this family. Daniel lunged for the ledger, but the detective stepped in his path. The house, once a place of Sunday roasts and holiday carols, was now a crime scene of the heart. Get out, I whispered, the words vibrating with a force that shook the rafters. But Mom, Daniel started, his face twisting into a mask of rage. Get out, I roared. As they were led toward the door, Daniel turned, his eyes wild. You think you've won? You're an old woman in a big house with no one left. You'll die here alone before the month is up. He slammed the door, leaving a silence that felt like a burial. I turned to Jacob, who was shaking, and pulled him into my arms. We were the only ones left. But then the phone rang, a private number. I answered it, and a voice I didn't recognize said, The files your husband left in the safe. The ones Daniel couldn't find. They're not about money, Helen. They're about who Daniel's biological father really is, and he's coming to claim what's his. My breath caught. The cliffhanger was a shadow I never saw coming. The revelation over the phone turned the air in the hallway to ice. All these years, I had guarded a secret that my husband, Arthur, had carried to his grave, a secret buried deep within the legalities of our marriage. Daniel wasn't the man he thought he was, and the dangerous people he owed money to weren't strangers. They were the echoes of a past I had tried to outrun. I turned to Jacob, my heart heavy with the weight of the coming storm. Jacob, stay in the kitchen. No matter what you hear, do not come out. I walked to the mahogany desk, not with the slow gait of a victim, but with the steady stride of a woman about to end a war. I opened the secret compartment Daniel had missed. Inside wasn't money, but a single, yellowed birth certificate and a letter of renunciation. The man coming for the house wasn't a creditor. He was the ghost of a mistake made in a moment of youthful despair, a man who had spent 30 years in the shadows of the London underworld. Just as I tucked the paper into my cardigan, the front door didn't just open. It was kicked off its hinges. Daniel stood there, his face contorted with a desperate, manic energy, but behind him stood a tall, silent figure in a charcoal overcoat. The man's eyes were a chilling mirror of Daniel's own. Where is it, Helen? Daniel screamed, his voice cracking with the strain of a man who had lost everything. The detective left, but he didn't take the files. I know there's more. I know this house is worth more than the brick and mortar. The man behind him stepped into the light, and I saw the jagged scar across his jaw, the mark of the vicar's family. Move aside, boy, the man growled, pushing Daniel with a casual strength that sent my son staggering against the wall. He looked at me, a flicker of recognition crossing his cold features. It's been a long time, Helen. I hear my inheritance has been handled poorly. Daniel gasped, looking between us. What? What are you talking about? Who is this? I stood tall, the silver recorder in my hand, still active, capturing every syllable of this final betrayal. This is Julian Vickers, Daniel, the man your father, the man who raised you, paid to stay away from us. And the reason he's here is because you led him right to my door with your greed. The twist hit Daniel like a physical blow. He wasn't the rightful heir to the Marwick legacy. He was the accidental byproduct of a past I had worked a lifetime to erase. Julian moved toward me, his hand reaching for the folder on the table. The house belongs to the bloodline, Helen, and since your boy here has proven he's incompetent, I'll take what's mine. But I didn't flinch. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the legal trust documents Mr. Bennett had finalized only hours before. You're too late, Julian, and you're too late, Daniel. This house, the accounts, and every penny of the Marwick estate no longer belong to me. They were transferred into an irrevocable trust for Jacob 3 hours ago. I am merely a life tenant, and the trustee is a firm that doesn't negotiate with ghosts or gamblers. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Daniel let out a strangled cry of no and lunged for the papers, but I stepped back, my voice rising with the authority of a woman who had finally found her spine. You thought I was a fatting light, a dim-witted old woman you could manipulate with a few forged signatures. But I am the one who built this life, and I am the one who will protect it. I pressed the button on my phone, a direct line to the detective who was still parked 2 blocks away. Now, I shouted. Within seconds, the sirens began to wail, the blue lights dancing against the floral wallpaper of the living room. Julian Vickers looked at me with a twisted sense of respect. You always were the smartest one in the room, Helen. Pity your son didn't inherit that. He turned and vanished through the broken door, slipping into the night before the police could arrive. Daniel, however, collapsed onto the floor, the weight of his debts and his shattered identity finally crushing him. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face, searching for the mother who would always forgive, always sign, always save him. But that mother was gone. I loved you, Daniel, I said, my voice cracking for the first and last time. But I love my dignity more. You'll have to find your own way now. The Marwick name is closed to you. The police entered, and as they led Daniel and a hysterical Laura, who had been waiting in the car, away for questioning regarding the forgeries and the drained accounts, the house finally fell into a true, hollow silence. Jacob came out from the kitchen, his face pale but his eyes filled with a new, hardened maturity. He looked at the broken door and then at me. Is it over, Grandma? I pulled him close, feeling the steady beat of a future that was finally secure. It's over, Jacob. The house is yours. The future is yours, and I am finally free. I sat back in my armchair, the old quilt wrapped around me. I wasn't an appliance. I wasn't a bank. I was Helen Marwick, and I had survived the night. I looked at the camera, a final, piercing gaze that spoke to every person who has ever been underestimated. They thought they were dividing my money, I whispered to the empty room. But all they did was multiply my strength. Thank you for watching this intense journey of betrayal and reclamation. This story proves that age is never a weakness, but a hidden weapon. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more latest and trending UK-style dramas. Would you have forgiven your children if you were in Helen's place? Yes or no?